Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer, joined by the two best in the industry at breaking down injuries, the rotation impacts, and the analysis associated. Justin Fan from Underdog Fantasy and Mike Gallagher from Established Run. 13 games on the slate. Justin, how are you doing on this late season NBA 13 game slate day?
We've hit single digits, my friends. We are at 9 slates of games left in the regular season. Light at the end of the tunnel. Got a lot to talk about today. I think the over on an hour is pretty strong, just with what Boston came out this morning. So let's get to it.
Mike, how are you on 9 games left? The countdown begins.
Yeah, only two more matchups for me to write, but yeah, definitely some trichodecaphobia with the number 13 on a ridiculous NBA slate today, but excited to break it down for sure.
Yeah, a couple 13 gamers coming up in the next few days, so it's going to be very, very busy. Let's get into the injury stuff. We'll go game by game today. Let's start with Chicago and Charlotte. Questionable side for Chicago, Alex Caruso, Andre Drummond for personal reasons. Any news or notes there on Chicago? Justin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, the comments were Caruso from Billy Donovan after were not good. He said he didn't look right playing through that foot injury on Wednesday, so he subbed him out earlier than usual in the third quarter to avoid worsening that injury. He added that he's going to have to fight through that foot soreness for the rest of the season. Said it's an ongoing challenge for him. So Caruso is questionable. I think it makes a ton of sense for them to hold him out if he's clearly limited. He can only play 19 minutes. So we saw, when Caruso sat on Monday, Patrick Williams entered the starting lineup, played 30 minutes, and then we saw Kobe White play 28, Derrick Jones Jr. and Ayo around 20. So yeah, I think this is something we'll have to watch for the rest of the season. I think Caruso is pretty much going to be limited, going to have to be dealing with this foot issue, and won't be able to play, his usual, upper 25, upper 20s minutes. So, even if he does go, I expect him to be limited again.
Yeah, definitely with you there. Patrick Williams would get the start. Wouldn't be surprised if he starts anyway, just to keep his minutes down, because this thing's been bothering him for like 2 months here. So, that would give a little size against a suddenly hot PJ Washington. We'll talk about Charlotte in a second, but yeah, definitely concerning, man. The poor guy just can't stay healthy right now. I should mention with the Drummond stuff, just to put a bow on the Drummond stuff. Yeah, it sounds like he's not playing, right? I mean, there were so many quotes about him dealing with personal stuff. I feel like they're, listing him questionable and, not pressuring him to come back for, all that stuff. So hope he feels better and everything, but I kind of think he's going to sit today.
Yeah, the Drummond that information is actually kind of interesting just because it opens up more rebounds for the team as a whole. He's had a 30+% rebound rate this year, basically the highest in the league from players that are playing somewhat normal rotation minutes. So that second unit, you could see some increased rebound rates for Kobe White and guys like that. The other thing on Caruso that I just note is like the Bulls are in this situation now where they had a little bit of a glimmer of hope for like advancing into the 7-8 area, and then they lost their last 2 games. And now they're kind of, it looks to me like in a very dead zone where they're very likely the 10th seed. Like they're 2 games up on Washington for the 11. They're 2 games behind Toronto and Atlanta for the 8 and 9. I'm sure that they want to win games as quickly as possible and put these things away. But I would also think that from their vantage point, like just rest Alex Caruso. Like there's no point in going out and kind of forcing him to play through stuff when he's had a history of struggling to do such things. So I would lean a little bit more on the doubtful side. And as Justin alluded to, if he's able to go, would certainly expect limited minutes. Let's move to the Charlotte side of things where they hit us with the after lock Dennis Smith Jr. news last time that they were on a slate. He is listed as questionable tonight. Kelly Oubre questionable as well. Gordon Hayward listed as doubtful. They signed Kobe Simmons to get a little bit more guard depth, suggesting to me that maybe they're unsure of Dennis Smith Jr.'s availability. Justin, what are your notes here for the Hornets?
Yeah, I don't have a ton. So we saw Snead was available too, but didn't play when they were super shorthanded. Not sure Kobe Simmons. They played an 8-man rotation. So we're counting 9 to 11 available for them, assuming depending on the statuses of Oubre and DSJ. We saw Teo Maledon get all the way up to 39 minutes on Tuesday without DSJ. They don't have a lot of point guard depth if DSJ is unable to go. And then we want to note this rotation that they're going with at center And today it seems like it's going to be a Mark Williams, Nick Richards day. Mark Williams will for sure play. We think he's going to start. And then we'll see on the backup center today between Richards and Kai. After today, we should have a pretty good idea of what the rotation is moving forward of which two are going to be playing on a given day. I would assume that when Mark Williams plays, he will start. And then when in the games that Mark Williams sits, we'll get Nick Richards starting at center instead. So we saw Mark Williams get all the way up to 32 minutes in his last start. He's been kind of ramping up. So I think his minutes should be pretty healthy. And then like Mike talked about earlier, the PJ Washington show, the usage the last 4 games has been through the roof. 31%, 36%, 29%, and 28%. It's just been his show. And they're going to continue to be short. They really have nothing to play for at this point outside of lottery balls. So yeah, I don't see them shutting down PJ Washington. He's been playing a ton lately. And I don't think they really need help losing games either.
They're in a total dead zone for lottery ball stuff. Like they can't move in either direction. So I mean, like it seems like they're just going to play the guys who are giving good effort. I mean, they've played really hard of late. Do you have any lean on Oubre availability tonight, Justin?
I would say Oubre 40% and then DSJ 50-50. That would be my initial lean. We don't get much injury info as a whole from the Hornets. Like they release their injury report, Hornets PR, and then we get a late minute DSJ scratch out of nowhere. So it's super frustrating.
Yeah, just to add, they've locked in their lottery position. They literally can't move out of it. Kelly Oubre got shots up the last game, pregame, so I think he's got a little bit of a chance. Was never really serious, just to go back to when he got hurt, checked out, sat on the bench for a couple minutes, then went back to the locker room. So I think he's got maybe a chance here, but they're just not playing for anything. Maybe they want to develop, look at Svi, et cetera, et cetera. DSJ, 59 after in like 40 seconds. Like you had to be the fastest man alive to move out off DSJ stuff when the Hornets PR tweet came. But it may have even been less than that. It may have been like 10 seconds. Anyways, great toe injury. Don't have a great read on that situation. He was the first one. I was just some of the OKC beats were tweeting stuff out. He was the first one to warm up. You know, it looked like he was ready to go, and all of a sudden scratched. So definitely think he's interesting there. And should note, if he's out, Teo Maledon, oh my God, he got like 10 minutes of touch time, huge role. Steve Mikhailuk, stat stuffing machine. I think he had two steals and blocks in the first half. Finished it with 5 total stocks. Big role there. Bryce McGowan didn't really do too much. He would probably start if it's no Oubre and they do have DSJ. That's how it was supposed to go. And then Maledon got elevated with DSJ getting ruled out. But certainly PJ Washington against Patrick Williams, I think is slightly bad, but the role is too good. And they're a 3-point funnel. We've seen PJ take a lot of threes, so still think PJ is in an okay spot. And I would guess, as you kind of mentioned, I think it's Kai Jones's turn to sit today. Yeah. So I think it's going to be Mark and Nick, and then no Kai. Kai's been filling in the backup minutes the last 2 games.
Yeah, I will also note that they've been putting up a lot of points even when they're shorthanded without all these guys in the lineup. But this is not a situation, fortunately, like we saw with Portland or we saw with Denver the last 2 nights where guys like Nasir Little or Aaron Gordon are in these spots with increased usage opportunities, but they're scoring like 80, 90 points. The Hornets are still running and gunning. They're still getting points up. So that's kind of, something worth noting at least.
They will be tested tonight, though, with the Bulls defense a little bit more imposing than the Mavericks and the Thunder have been of late. But yeah, there's a little bit more shot creation just generally on this team. Like that's the big concern with Portland, which we'll talk about later, is just shot creation. Let's move to OKC and Indy. On the Indy side, Miles Turner questionable, Gabe York, G Leaguer, questionable, Tyrese Halliburton and Chris Duarte out, not listed on the injury report, but he healed, so expecting his return tonight. Any notes here? Mike, I'll start with you on Miles Turner and that questionable tag and left ankle soreness once again.
Yeah, I just don't have a read on the Miles Turner thing. I think he's going to sit. There's commentary about, getting a look at these guys, Jalen Smith and Isaiah Jackson. So I would lean he sits here. Buddy healed. There was commentary from Rick Carlisle saying that, he's been a pro and kind of hinted he'll continue to come off the bench to look at Jordan Nwora. Aaron Nesmith also went to the locker room briefly and came back. He's fine, not listed. But so I would honestly lean a starting lineup of Nembhard, Benny Math, Nwora, Nesmith, and I think they've been alternating here. So maybe it's Jalen Smith's turn. It's a total guess. And then, they're going to mostly split it down the middle there, but not much of a read on Miles Turner. It just feels like they actually do have incentive to tank it, kind of a lot of it. This little 5 to 7 range, that's really specific, right? You're talking about 32%. You can increase to 40% if you can move from the 7 to the 5. So we know that the Magic aren't tanking. Good luck catching the Blazers. But if you could somehow maybe move up, maybe somehow Shaedon Sharpe shoots 50% from the field with a bunch of threes, they could pull a win out. But I think there's a lot of incentive to sit Miles Turner today.
Yeah, so Carlisle came out and said before last game that there's a good chance that Halliburton and Miles Turner don't play again this season. Now, right after that, he kind of hedged a little bit. I think he didn't want to be so overt about the tanking part. He said that they'll kind of evaluate them from game to game and day to day. But just given that comment, he explicitly said that we're expecting Miles Turner not to play today. And yeah, the two lineup decisions, like Mike talked about, are Buddy Hield versus Jordan Nwora. We're wait and see. So we have Buddy Hield in there as of now, but wouldn't be surprising if he came off the bench. And then we have Isaiah Jackson as a starter for ahead of Jalen Smith tonight. We just think Jackson is just a general starter in this spot. And he's been the starter just generally in the past when Turner's been out. So right now we have Hield and Jackson, but those are two position battles to keep an eye on for sure.
On the other side,
I didn't get any commentary to why Smith started that Dallas game. That was kind of
it wasn't O'Shea Brissett like hometown thing either. I looked into it. There wasn't any.
Same.
On the other side of that game, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with the not so unusual hokey pokey listed out today to start the day, now upgraded to questionable midday. They obviously have a lot to play for in terms of play-in positioning. And this is a team that we've actually seen this a couple times during the course of the season where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been listed out and then midday upgraded to questionable. In many of those situations, if I'm remembering correctly, he's played. Yep. Justin, what's your read here on Oklahoma City?
Yep, we've seen this song the answer from them. They list guys out the day before, and then they upgrade him questionable day of, and then those guys end up playing. So I don't think they would do this with SGA and upgrade him if they didn't think he had a really good chance of playing. So as of now, would expect him to go. That really takes Isaiah Joe off the map. Joe's been great, averaging 33 underdog fantasy points over the last couple of games, playing 33 minutes a game. So he's totally off the map. And it takes a little bit of ceiling off of J-Dub and Giddey as well. But like you said, they are incentivized to win at this point. I think, they wouldn't. I mean, we got off our tanking jokes about OKC, maybe justifiably so early on in the season, but they have been definitely going for it, and they're trying to be competitive. So yeah, do we expect any sort of minutes limits from SGA if he goes? You think he's fully good to go, Mike?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we saw him, and it's kind of interesting to see how this works because maybe he has actually more minutes. Let me explain. So when he rolled his ankle on Sunday against the Blazers, they actually put him in earlier to prevent stiffness. So I'm wondering if they ramp him up like crazy today. And again, this game's pretty big. We've seen the Pacers get, oh my God, just giving up so many points. I think they're the first team to allow a 50-point score and a 30-point triple-double player with Giannis going trip-dubs and Drew going 50. But certainly, it crossed my mind that they might do this because we saw him warm up the last game, and I covered boy J-Dub for today. I'm like, all right, hopefully SGA has a good upgraded, and he does. So the J-Dub, maybe he'll hit another game winner, right, and boost our narrative here that he could take. It's coming here. He's almost like single digits to one.
We talked about this. We need OKC to make the play-in for him to be live for Rookie of the Year. That's the only path. Where he gains relevancy, he stays on top of people's minds because people aren't watching OKC Detroit on a Wednesday. You need to have him a little bit more on primetime stage. And Moncaro and the Magic have been dead.
Powell's been playing well. Yeah, but Powell's been playing well. So I think that's the other part.
But the Magic are just out of the public consciousness. No one's paying attention to them anymore. They started out pretty well, and then they just totally tailed off ever since.
Yeah. A couple notes here. Gallagher mentioned the NDD. They have allowed 149, 127, 143, 120, 114, 115, 141, 123 points in their last like 8 or 9 games.
Is that good?
The absence of Miles Turner seems to be
Huge.
felt in Indy tonight. And then just from a props betting perspective, I don't know if we'll get any more of these situations the rest of the way. But it had me thinking that this is at least the second time we've seen this with SGA. And Justin, as you've alluded to, in the sense that they seem to list guys the night before and then update later on midday. So those tags kind of carry over during the day, but they're not really as relevant. Might make sense in these situations if you have SGA miss a game and you know the injury is not super serious to just blind bet Giddey unders the next day, because the lines are released as if he's out because it says he's out, but then you might get the upgrade. Again, I don't know if we'll get another situation like this the rest of the year on this. I doubt we will, but it's something that entered my mind today after seeing this happen for the second time.
It's the opposite of Giannis probable tags, basically.
Yeah, you're kind of free rolling for a little bit with some upside, and you can always buy out. If it ends up holding.
Yeah. All right, let's move to the Orlando Magic and the Rookie of the Year conversation. No big news here. Kevon Harris and Jonathan Isaac listed out, so we can kind of skip through them pretty quickly. They're playing Washington. Washington has Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma still listed out, and Daniel Gafford, who missed the last game. He's listed questionable with left foot soreness. Any read on Gafford's availability here, Justin?
I don't really have too much info. I actually tried to do some digging last night on Gafford. Couldn't really find much. He was out on Tuesday. It's about all that I didn't really hear any quotes from their coaching staff or anything like that, or their beat writers either, which, Josh Robbins is really good. He just didn't have any intel, I guess. So we're coming in blind. It's a Q tag. I'll also just say 50-50 just off the top. And then, I think, we see obviously a big spot for Kristaps Porzingis. We've talked about Deni Avdija on the show and his rebounding upside. Without Gafford, that improves even more. I think the only rotational thing was Taj Gibson got back on the rotation with Gafford out. And then, I think if Gafford's out, we see, that same starting line of Monte, DeLon Wright, Kispert, Deni Avdija, and KP.
Yep. I went to the locker room briefly. Not much concern post game. And I think there's like a narrative of him, winning field goal percentage title. He has to hit like a certain amount of shots, so maybe that could maybe get him in there. I may be making that up, but I could check back into that. But so I think he's in. Interesting. I think honestly, it's interesting, right? Like I talked about the Wizards having, a little bit of juice here to maybe move up. And Kristaps is playing, right? I think that's kind of cool that. Kuzma's been pretty healthy in his career. Obviously, he's hurt. He's legit hurt. But it is kind of wild to me that Kristaps is out there playing pretty well.
Yeah, they're still 2 games back of Chicago. It's a situation tonight where Chicago's playing Charlotte, who's been feisty of late. If Charlotte pulls off their 4th in a row and Washington takes care of business with Orlando, all of a sudden it is a little bit of a sweat. But they don't look like they've been going for it. That being said, they just blew out Boston without all these guys. So, it's late season NBA. It's the challenges of it. It was interesting to us that DeLon Wright got the start last game instead of a bigger player like an Anthony Gill or something like that, even against the Celtics with Jason Tatum. So would expect DeLon Wright in that scenario again against the Magic, similar type structure of an opponent there. Let's move to
full
Toronto.
First quarter rotation too for him too. He played the full first. That was interesting.
Yeah. Let's go to Toronto and Philadelphia. On the Philadelphia side, thankfully, no questionable tags for James Harden or Joel Embiid. There is a questionable tag, however, for Tobias Harris, who's listed with non-COVID illness. The non-COVID illness questionable tag, a tough one to fight through this year. Justin, what are your thoughts on Tobias Harris?
Yeah, same-day illness, never a good sign. We'll say, though, that we did get a note from the Sixers beat writer that everybody on that team fully participated in shoot-around this morning, which would include Tobias Harris. So this for me isn't just knowing that, not as big a death knell as I usually would treat it, like the same day illness, but generally not a good sign. So it might probably lean a little bit towards him not playing, and we would see D'Anthony Melton move in the starting lineup in his place, and we see more Jalen McDaniels and Daniel House as well. If you run the numbers, James Harden has been the biggest beneficiary this season in terms of fantasy points per minute, when Harris has been off the court, with Tyrese Maxey a close second. So I think we'll see on Tobias.
Don't have too much to add there. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I'm curious in this Gafford thing. Oh yeah, he needs 300 field goal makes to qualify. So he's actually got a long way to go. He's probably not going to get it.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds like a far way for Daniel Gafford.
Yeah, he can't get it. So that won't really fuel him to play.
Toronto side of things, Will Barton listed doubtful here. Gary Trent Jr. still listed questionable with those lower back spasms. Joe Wieskamp questionable, Delano Banton questionable. Don't think that's super relevant. Mike, any notes on Gary Trent Jr. and his likelihood of playing tonight?
Yeah, Nick Nurse said it's a muscle thing with his shooting elbow. He sounded like he's got an okay shot to play. We'll see here. Obviously, he's been dealing with this for a little bit. Could see him missing. It's been Jeff Dowden picking up the run. Chris Boucher is certainly more secure. It is definitely, hashtag biggest game of the season time of the year. So expect it to be pretty tight. Matchup's been pretty good. The Sixers defense has really slipped. I think they're in the bottom 5-ish, giving up a lot of 3-pointers again. So definitely an advantageous spot here for a team that's playing for a lot. It's really important this time of year. That's why we keep pulling up these standings and tankathon and stuff. So could expect pretty heavy minutes here in a matchup I like for Van Vliet. I think that he'll see a little bit of Melton, but seeing a little bit of Maxey, who they trust now defensively. I think it's a really good spot for Fred VanVleet, especially if Gary Trent doesn't play.
Yeah, you're talking Fred VanVleet when I'm asking about Gary Trent. So Justin, you give me the Gary Trent information.
I mentioned his shooting elbow and being muscle related.
He did. So to kind of specify in the Nurse comments, Nurse said that he's getting shots up, he's getting workouts in, but the elbow still isn't quite right. He did add that he expects him back fairly shortly, so it doesn't sound like he's going to miss a lot more time. Maybe he misses today. One of the Raptors beat writers said he's skeptical that either Trent or Barton will play today. So for what it's worth, maybe 45% to go. But like we've seen an 8-man rotation, basically from Nick Nurse, without those two, with Precious and Boucher and Dowden off the bench. It looks like Precious has come back and leapfrog Koloko in that rotation as the primary backup center-ish. But yeah, I think it's, we got Koloko and Malachi Flynn DNP CDs on Tuesday. So it looks like Precious is solidified in there as one of the 8.
And the exact quotes, I'll give you the exact quotes on Trent here. He is, quote, still in the questionable category. He is, quote, just not right, and he should be back, quote, fairly shortly.
Yeah, we watched that. We watched that same video. I watched that video too. Yeah.
You guys are talking elbow though, and he's listed with a back with lower back spasms. So I don't know what's going on the injury report here. But a little bit concerning that the injury that Nurse is referring to is not the one that they're actually listing. So yeah, it sounds like we might need a little bit more time on Gary Trent. Let's move to Atlanta and Brooklyn. Atlanta listed DeAndre Hunter out with knee swelling. Jalen Johnson going to be available tonight. So Justin, how do you think this impacts things for Atlanta with DeAndre Hunter out?
Yeah, when Hunter sat on Saturday, we saw Bogdanovic get the start, and that is the expectation from the beat writers again, that he would go, and we would see a bump from Saddiq Bey. Saddiq Bey usually around 20 minutes on average. He saw 25 on Saturday, and then AJ Griffin usually around the teens in minutes. Saw 23 on Saturday. So basically bumps for Bogdan, Saddiq Bey, and AJ Griffin in terms of minutes. Curious to see how deep they go in the rotation. It looks like Jalen Johnson is back. So, assuming Bogdan starts, we're thinking that bench is Okongwu, Saddiq Bey, Jalen Johnson, and AJ Griffin. They go 9-man without any Garrison Matthews or Holiday. So that's our assumption right now with our rotation.
Yeah, should add they wanted to get a look at Vit Krejci. We saw him sneak in there for some minutes. That was kind of odd. It seemed like a one and done thing. Just reading between the lines on when Quinn Snyder said there. And yeah, low key losing Hunter. McCall season, because Hunter would have got that matchup, and now you're getting a significantly softer one here. So definitely.
I think I saw a tweet that they're like 3-8 this season without DeAndre, and DeAndre to people would seem like he's kind of underwhelming and hasn't really broken out, but he's low key pretty important for that team and what they need.
Yep.
Yeah,
they need wing defense is really important for them.
Yeah, he's one of their top 9 players that plays defense, and they only have one. So so it's a big missing part, and they obviously have a lot to play for. They're currently tied in the standings with Toronto for that 8-9 play-in spot, and only a game and a half behind Miami, which I know is important for many of the people that listen to this show. Let's move to the Brooklyn side of things. Day'Ron Sharpe listed probable there. No other real big injury notes. Of course, Ben Simmons done for the season without Drew Smith and David Duke Jr. in G League two-way contracts. So Day'Ron Sharpe probable. Any other notes here, Gallagher, on the Nets?
Yeah, just upgraded probable. Should be maybe back. I don't think it really impacts things. Against a bigger unit in Okongwu, who's been playing pretty well lately. I believe that's Fans guy. So yeah, I think Sharp would get in there. He's been pretty impactful. Again, going against a true center, I think that makes sense. We saw him use him in the Cleveland game and things like that. So I think he would be in there. Obviously, that would really cut down the Utah's. Sumner would obviously go away. Royce is safe. Like their starters plus Royce are very safe, and then you're getting kind of fringy there. But I think Seth is next, getting the non-Spencers, couple overlap, and then Day'Ron. I think that's kind of your 8, and then you're picking up some Joe Harris here and there against a team that doesn't give up too many threes. So I think that's kind of how you would approach this situation. And yeah, again, minutes here could be really strong. Not a back-to-back set, in a matchup that just got significantly better. Without Hunter. The Hawks defense has been so bad around the basket. They're just lost. They're asking Trey to do too much. DeJounte doesn't get enough help when he guards guys. So really good spot for the Nets today.
Let's move to the Knicks in Cleveland. On the Cleveland side of things, a pretty full injury report for Cleveland. We haven't seen many of these this year. Isaac Okoro is out. So is Danny Green, Isaiah Mobley, Raul Neto questionable. He's not really been in the rotation. Jared Allen doubtful. Dean Wade probable. So they were without Jared Allen and Dean Wade last game. They'll get Dean Wade back tonight, it sounds like. Matchup with the Knicks is one that used to require a lot of bigs. And so being down Jared Allen might mean more Dean Wade. But now without Julius Randle, the matchup changes. No Jared Allen, though. It's been Lamar Stevens' season since. And they played really tight last game, which clinched their playoff spot. Justin, any thoughts on if we continue to see them playing this tight and how Dean Wade's return impacts the rotation that we saw last game?
Yeah, so a couple of things here. The comments from the Cavs overall about this game has been that they're approaching it like a playoff game and they understand the stakes. There isn't a ton to play for. I think they're kind of locked in seating, but the quotes have been like they're going to play it pretty tight. So I expect big minutes again from these starters. We saw Garland, Mitchell, Stevens, Mobley all played at least 40 minutes on Tuesday. They went 8-man with Rubio, Jetty, and Diakite off the bench. Donovan Mitchell kind of let the cat out of the bag. It wasn't a surprise, but he said they're going to be without their 2 best defensive players tonight. Obviously in Okoro and Jared Allen. Allen's doubtful, so pretty much can treat that as an out. So we can run that back. And then we see Evan Mobley, like in his last 5 games without Jared Allen, averaging 19, 10, and 4 with 2 blocks a game. So he's been absolutely amazing. We're seeing the minutes for these guys rise as well. So I'm not sure if Dean Wade's actually going to get in the rotation. He's been out of the rotation for the most part for a while now. So, I think
it's not like Diakite's minutes. Diakite's playing center. Like Dean Wade at center is a little bit of a tougher ask. So they could easily just stick with 8.
As of now, I have it at 8. And you can projection hedge. I think Dean Wade's like your way of projection hedging and not having to project like all these guys for 40 minutes. That's probably his main use in the projections right now. But I would not expect a big role for him at all.
You don't really need. I was just going to say, without Julius Randle in the mix, you really don't need Dean Wade. He's usually the guard a bigger 3, a 4 kind of a role player for them. So offensively, floor spacing against the Knicks, I think makes sense. But I think he's kind of outside looking in as well.
The other note I had here was Donovan Mitchell not listed on the injury report.
Yep.
He tweaked that ankle kind of badly, it looked, in the fourth quarter late. He was kind of hobbling around. Being in a game they scored 44, in the last few minutes of that game, Darius Garland got a lot of the usage because Donovan Mitchell just seemed like he couldn't really push off that ankle. I was shocked not to see him at least draw a probable tag.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any notes here?
I've heard absolutely nothing about Donovan Mitchell. We added him to our sheet just as a monitor, and we've been keeping an eye because I saw that same thing. And there's an article, I think, from Fedor afterwards talking about that injury. But there's been zero mention ever since that game for anything about Donovan Mitchell's ankle. So I assume he's like healthy and good to go.
Yeah, I think it's just a hashtag biggest game of the season situation. This game's big, man. We'll just pull up I got too many tabs open here. I mean, they could, pretty much end it here, and then maybe just I don't think they're going to catch Philly, but I think that this game is important to them. Then they can start maybe managing guys. Should mention Jared Allen got shots up. He's not playing today. He's doubtful, but it sounds like he should be back pretty close. We're doing our best ball stuff and just making sure he was good to go. So it sounds like this could be the last game for Allen. Maybe one more because they're maybe not playing for much if they do get this win today.
On the Knicks side of things, obviously the Julius Randle going to be out a couple weeks, which that timeline certainly sounds like the reevaluation period would be around game one of the first round playoffs. So it sounds like the Knicks could even enter that first round matchup potentially without Julius Randle. So they're going to need to start planning and adjusting as if, like, what does a playoff rotation look like without Julius Randle in case they need to. Tonight's a good test to be able to do that. The Knicks fans who have wanted more Obi Toppin, this is a potential opportunity to get more Obi Toppin tonight. So, Gallagher, what are your expectations for what the Knicks look like in the absence of Julius Randle?
Yeah, we talked through this quite a bit. So there's a whole lot going on here. If you played season-long fantasy or daily fantasy late last year, you remember Obi Toppin like breaking slates. I think he was like top 6 in like season-long value. But horse of a different color here. Obviously, Josh Hart in the mix, much stronger second unit now with Emmanuel quickly. You've got Jalen Brunson who takes up more usage. It's a completely different situation here. Tom Thibodeau said that he's going to be playing Obi, Josh Hart, and he actually threw in Jericho Sims as a 4, which we've seen at times here. But first game Julius Randle has missed on the year, which is interesting for his All-NBA case, but that's a story for another day. But so we really tinkered around on where Obi comes down. So we saw him play, 9.5 minute stint to start the third. I think we're gonna get, close to 18, 19, 20 minutes in first and third quarters. But he didn't close in the last game. May not close here. I think not having Jared Allen low key is kind of bad for him because they're going to play a little bit smaller. Hart's a great rebounder, et cetera, et cetera. So really wide range of outcomes. If he's hot, he could probably play like mid 30s, but he can get cut down, not play any second or fourth quarters at all because they do have depth. We know they'll play quickly a ton if they need to. Mentioned Josh Hart already. Quentin Grimes has been playing freaking awesome lately as well. Some commentary from RJ Barrett saying he's comfortable playing the 4 as well. So really everything around this Obi Toppin situation isn't quite as favorable as it was last year.
Yeah, there's a definite minutes floor here. And we saw Tibbs do Tibbs things. He played quickly Grimes, RJ, Josh Hardenstein the entire fourth quarter. And Quentin Grimes played the entire second half too. So we saw, no Obi in the fourth quarter at all. So I think that's definitely a possibility where we don't see him close games. Josh Hart is like the biggest X factor here. Like Tibbs loves Josh Hart, and he should because he's been great for them along with Quentin Grimes. So we've seen Grimes and IQ both get a big usage bump this season when Randall's been off the court. I think we probably see an 8-man for the Knicks moving forward with Brunson, Grimes, RJ, Obi, and Mitch as the starters, and then a 3-man bench of quickly Josh Hart and Isaiah Hartenstein. So I don't think we'll see much Jericho Sims. I think we saw as we saw last game, Tibbs is pretty comfortable playing it tight. Like I said, really should elevate the minutes floor of Quentin Grimes, who played the entire second half. So he should be playing a ton of minutes, especially if RJs want to slide down and play more at the 4. Opens up more wing minutes for him.
Yeah, a couple notes I had there. You mentioned it, Justin, in terms of who played the entire fourth quarter. There was one other name on there that wasn't in the fourth quarter rotation at all, which is Jalen Brunson. So Obi Toppin didn't play any fourth quarter minutes, and Jalen Brunson also didn't play any fourth quarter minutes. Highlighting the fact that I really think at the end of the day, they're going to close with ideally one of Jalen Brunson or IQ, ideally one of Mitch or Hartenstein, and then 3 of the 4 of Barrett, Grimes, and then the other of IQ or Brunson. I would be shocked if Obi Toppin's closing under any circumstances, which for me makes it so that I think the ceiling is really modest on Obi. Like he'd have to come out and just blaze from 3-point range to earn more than like 27, 28 minutes would be my guess. So I think they're going to lean into, like, if you ask Tibbs, here's a way now without Julius Randle that I can play more Quentin Grimes and more Emmanuel quickly. in more Josh Hart, I think he'd be like, yeah, that sounds great. Like these guys have been awesome. I want to play those guys. So I think those guys all get a relatively big boost here. And I think RJ Barrett gets a really big boost too, because his minutes are less at risk when he's competing with Obi Toppin compared to when he's competing with Josh Hart and Quentin Grimes and Emmanuel Quickly. So I think all those wings get a big boost.
Yeah, so I also want to close with this because I do have a note on this. So you mentioned Jalen Brunson did not play at all in the fourth quarter, and we did get some intel finally from Jalen on his health right now. So Brunson had his hand wrapped in ice after shoot around this morning. He said he jammed that hand. He's dealing with swelling, and he's still doing everything he can to get that swelling down and for it to be less painful. He also added that he's doing maintenance still on that sore foot that kept him out of 5 games at the beginning of this month. So, he's still pretty banged up right now. We'll note that Jalen's not only dealing with that hand issue, but also dealing with foot soreness as well. So I think that health is impacting not only his performance, but his minutes potentially as well, where we see in some of these spots where he's not closing games. So just want to note that on Jalen Brunson, clearly not 100%.
Yeah. All right, let's move to Boston and Utah. Justin, you referred to the Boston injury report this morning. Let's go through it. Questionable tags: Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, Peyton Pritchard, Jason Tatum. Doubtful tag for Robert Williams. Left knee injury management, the tag on Robert Williams. So not a lot of clarity here from Boston on the second night of back-to-back. Huge win against Milwaukee in what ended up being one of the least entertaining slates of basketball we've had all year, disappointingly so. What are your thoughts on how Boston approaches things tonight? Because now with that win over Milwaukee, they're back in the mix for that number 1 seed, which we know is really important in the Eastern Conference this year.
I thought this would be a spot where they would play their guys coming off a blowout. They got that win. They're 2 games back on the number 1 seed with a tiebreaker in hand. They have 3 days off after today's game. So I thought this might have been a spot that Horford played, and I did not expect there's to be a laundry list of injury players on an injury report. I don't really have, obviously, a ton of intel because Jaylen Brown looked amazing last night. The Jays were, I think they outscored. Had more points combined than the Bucks or the Bucks did, like deep in the third quarter. They had like 69 points and the Bucks had 68. They looked pretty healthy to me last night. So not sure where these injury tags are coming from them. I think there's a lot of uncertainty. I don't really have much confidence projecting. Obviously, we know Horford hasn't played a back-to-back all season. He talked about last back-to-back how he could have played. Was thinking about playing, but ended up being ruled out. So we think Horford probably doesn't play today. But there's just so much uncertainty. Obviously, the beneficiaries would be Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon,
Grant Williams.
Grant Williams, yeah, for sure. I guess on the fringes, we'll note that Kevin Gallagher and Davison are not on the injury report now, out for G League, so they look like they're options if they need to. But yeah, it's like, Blake Griffin would obviously start at center if Horford's out, and then you have like Sam Hauser, Grant Williams, Luke Cornett, Mike Muscala as depth there too. Peyton Pritchard maybe comes back and adds some more depth, so we'll see.
Yeah, a couple things to add. One, I'm mildly shocked Malcolm Brogdon's not even listed. I thought he would be. I ranked like who's most likely to sit. I put Time Lord 1, Horford 2, Brogdon 3. I feel like those 3 guys were for sure not playing. So I guess keep an eye out. We've seen them do that a lot. We've seen them add him probable all the time in the middle of the day, and he doesn't play.
Yeah.
So I guess keep your eyes peeled for that.
Good point.
But yeah, I don't have too much else to add. As you kind of alluded to, the Jays didn't play at all in the fourth quarter. Al Horford didn't play in the final 16 minutes of this game. So maybe, again, since the stakes are pretty valuable here to move up to number 1, we talked about all season how 1 is so much better than 2. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. I think the Jays play, and I would still lean Horford sitting here. It's not like the matchup is too tough here. Utah sitting Lauri Markkanen. I mean, they should be able to maybe. And I would say I think Jaylen Brown's more likely to play than Tatum. We've seen Tatum sit out back-to-backs recently, so I think Jaylen Brown's got a pretty good chance to play. And then we'll see on Tatum. Maybe they just play him like shorter-ish minutes.
That was going to be my note. I think it's likely one of them plays. I don't know if both of them will play, but I would be surprised if everybody sat here, just given the fact that they just worked themselves kind of right back into that conversation for the number one seed.
Yeah.
On the other side, Kelly Olynyk listed available with the non-COVID illness. Want to shout out and thank you, Utah, for not dragging us along with a questionable tag on Kelly O. Last game, that Q tag came late. He ended up sitting and missing that game. I flashed the tank warning signs that there's a concern here, which ended up working out okay for our subscribers because Walker Kessler just got in foul trouble really quickly. But they look like they're playing fairly normally with the guys that they have available to them. Kelly Olynyk will be available tonight. Any notes here, Mike, on Utah?
Yeah, he got the midday illness Q tag. We know that's death, so no surprise. Upgrade here. We'll see how it's going to be affecting him here. Some players, we talk about this a lot. Players don't get listed with illnesses all the times. Mike Conley is actually playing through illness. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But yeah, I expect him to start. Simone Fontecchio would get back into the 3 spot. Obviously, Ochai Agbaji would still be getting the 2 spot. Taylor Horton-Tucker, monster. I mean, just a nutty matchup against the Spurs. It was easy to see a big game coming there. And yeah, Chris Dunn lose a little bit of minutes as they play a little bit smaller. Johnny Uzang also loses some playing time. And then I wouldn't be surprised if Juan Toscano Anderson goes from penthouse to outhouse and just gets completely eliminated from the rotation to play a little bit more the other Luka, not Garza, not Doncic, but Luka Samanic.
I want to talk a little bit about the minutes here. And so we saw a bit of a hint of it with Walker Kessler last game. I know there was some talk from people that were tilted that he only played 21 minutes. And there was some speculation that it was because he took a jumper that Hardy was pissed off about it. Afterwards, Hardy said it wasn't about the jumper. He said that he thought Kessler looked tired and also said that he was glad that they were able to limit him to just 21 minutes that they needed from him. So I actually am concerned a little from those comments about the minutes of guys like Kessler and Olynyk down the stretch. I think we could see high 20s, mid 20s potentially from those guys. I would just be on the alert because that comment to me is like, he said, we were glad to limit him to just the 21 minutes we needed from him. Like, like that was the plan, or they had that kind of going in. So I will say Kessler looked pretty damn good in the second half. He was like plus 20. Yeah. He played pretty well in the second half, and he still only played like 11 minutes in the second half. Yeah. So that's something I would be very cognizant of. They do have front court depth with JTA, Samanic, Juzang,
Damian Jones,
Azubuike, Damian Jones. So they've always been very front loaded and their depth on the front court. So that's very concerning to me. That's something that I would keep an eye on with Kessler and Olynyk.
And they ran huge. They ran some like double big lineups as well with Jones and Doka Azubuike.
Let's move from the Jazz to the Pistons. Pistons, a similar injury report. Tons of guys out. Bojan Bogdanovic, Burks, Cade Cunningham, Hamidou Diallo, Rodney McGruder, Isaiah Stewart. Kind of the usual suspects that we've seen of late. Justin, any notes on Detroit as they go into Houston for a tanktastic game tonight?
No, tanks are fully out. I don't really have any notes here. It's basically what they've been running. We got the Wiseman Duran fiasco last game where they do this all the time. And it was the Pistons PR put it out. It was on the official NBA lineups page too. Yep. They've done this multiple times this season where they just submitted the wrong lineup and they've switched it up the last minute. I would fully expect Wiseman to get in there, despite if Duran even gets announced in pregame warmups, which was the case last game. Wiseman still started, so I would just have her beware for any shenanigans there. I'm pretty sure like Troy Weaver in that front office has the biggest man crush ever possible on James Wiseman, and they will continue to start him.
Yeah, pure pain if you bet that news like I did. I bet James Wiseman under 13.5, 14, and I bet Duran over 10.5 gets 10. Yeah. The double hooking, it was just, oh, God. But yeah, rough game from Livers. I think his minutes could be back. Worth noting, too, Kojo talked a little bit about, possibly tanking here. No, he plays 33, really big role there. Jaden Ivey continues to play really, really strong, fouled out there. But matchup is one of the best. Driving guards against the Rockets is one of my jams. So considered putting him as the cover boy today. maybe I should have with the SGA news, but pretty good Ivy spot.
Let's move to the Houston side of things. Jayshawn Tate still listed out with that left knee soreness. No Ty Washington on assignment in the G League, and Kenyon Martin Jr. listed questionable with left hip flexor strain. So we go from talking about one of my guys, Jaden Ivey, to maybe another one of my guys, Tari Eason. Justin, what are your notes here on Kenyon Martin Jr.'s availability for the Rockets?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of details, but KJ Martin would be a pretty significant loss for this team. He regularly plays 30 minutes a night and closer to 33, 34 in competitive games, and they're really short on wing depth just overall. I kind of looked through all their lineups. The most used lineup without KJ Martin and without like Eric Gordon or Garrison Matthews, guys aren't on the roster anymore, is KPJ, Jalen Green, Tari Eason, Jabari, and Şengün. So that's lineups play like 80 minutes, and it's like significantly the next most used lineup that doesn't feature Gordon or KJ Martin or Garrison Matthews. So I would guess that if KJ's out, they would start Tari Eason at the 3. There was some resistance early on in the season to playing Tari more at the 3, which limited his minute ceiling. But they feel more. They've been doing it more. They feel more comfortable with it. So I would guess that would be what they'd run. And with Josh Christopher, Usman Garuba, and Daishen Nix off the bench, probably could see an 8-man. Like the only other guys that are in there are vets that they really don't have any incentive to play, like DJ Augustine, Boban Marjanovic, and then Frank Kaminsky too. So I think if KJ misses, like big minutes floors too for KPJ and Jalen Green, they just don't have that guard wing depth, and KJ would be a big loss for that.
Yeah, KPJ is running like full first quarter rotations as well. Wink, wink for first quarter overs club. But yeah, Tari's been subbing in early as a 3. That's been a really big paradigm shift for the rotation. Really, since the Gordon trade, they've been more willing to play him at the 3. So I'm with you. I think he starts and.
Oh, we lose Gallagher. There goes Gallagher. One man down already. Questionable to return. I think Tari Eason obviously is stat stuffer whenever he gets minutes, so be on the lookout tonight because Houston's been willing to play their guys a lot, and the matchup with Detroit can't get much better. So it's not ideal for him from a fantasy perspective to be getting the minutes at the 3 because he gets so much of his stuff from rebounding and putbacks and stuff like that. But just having the playing time would be really nice. Justin, let's move to the Clippers-Memphis game. Marcus Morris still listed out for health and safety protocols. Kawhi Leonard listed questionable for personal reasons. He was a midday scratch last game. Any notes or thoughts on the availability of Kawhi Leonard tonight?
Yeah, he's present at shoot around, and when we're talking about like personal issues with the player, it's mostly like they're away from the team, dealing with those personal issues, and when they're back with the team, they're going to be playing, right? So he was at shoot around. He's with the team right now, so very good sign for his availability. Look at that starting lineup of Russ, Eric Gordon, Kawhi, Nick Batum, and Ivica Zubac. Probably a 4-man bench of Bones, Terrence Mann, Robert Covington, and Mason Plumlee. Would not expect any sort of restrictions on Kawhi. I think he's a full go. We'll also note that you've had all these like injuries or like guys being out, having to force Ty Lue into making the correct lineup adjustments and rotation adjustments. Finally, like we're finally seeing Nick Batum get in there ahead of Marcus Morris. Robert Covington should be playing. Like every time I see him out there, he's making an impact. We've seen more Terrence Mann in some of these spots out of necessity with Paul George out. I think they're playing more of the right guys lately, but I'm not going to credit Tyler for any of this.
So you think, do you think Roko's in for sure? Because I mean, Bones is playing freaking awesome. So competing for that 9th spot, you've obviously got the starters, and you got Plumlee for sure, Powell for sure.
Yeah.
And then do you think that they're all kind of in there?
Potentially.
I should say man for sure. So that's 8.
Right. I actually didn't include Norm Powell in there. Obviously, he's in there as well. But yeah, Roko would be that 10th guy.
I think Bones has been too good, man. I think they got to keep playing him, especially against up tempo. He killed him. He's been just rolling. So I think that they go 9. I kind of think Roko, but Roko just made 7 of 7 from 3 too. So
he needs to be playing, man.
Spot.
I don't care. Give him 5-10 minutes. He just needs to be playing. He makes an impact. Rich, every time I see him out there, I'm like, dude, they're going on a run because Roko is just creating havoc. So I'm interested to see if when Marcus Morris gets back, what his role is in all this.
Nope. He's done. I feel very confident Marcus Morris is done.
Done, like
done.
Yeah,
done. Why? Why would you play him?
I agree. I'm with you. I've been out on Marcus Morris for the longest time.
You guys gotta log into Twitter, go to Tomar's Twitter page. He can tell you all about Marcus Morris boxing out and how the Clippers rebound better without with Marcus Morris on the floor. Because Clipper fans are in those mentions all day about Marcus Morris. Will note this is the most important game of the slate for me, because we've got under 51.5 for Memphis, and we need it, Clips. We need it. Yeah. Russ, I appreciate you turning back the clock. 13 for 18 from the field, 5 for 9 from 3, calling Dylan Brooks trash. All of it was beautiful. Yep. Thank you, Russ.
Russ, I named Brody after Russ. If he doesn't beat the Clippers today, the Grizzlies say I'm changing his name. I can't live with it.
On the Grizzlies side, a lot of out tags here. Steven Adams, Brandon Clark, Jake LaRavia, Kenneth Lofton Jr., Vince Williams Jr., Zaire Williams, all listed out. John Conchar listed questionable tonight. You'll notice none of the names of Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bane, John Morant, Tyus Jones, all the main guys are back for this one after sitting that back-to-back that they went with just basically Ja. So any rotation notes here, Justin, for the Grizzlies?
Not a whole lot. They'll get their usual guys back. I think John Conchar really impacts things, re-added to the injury report with a Q tag. So obviously Ja's ramping up his minutes to full, played 35 last game. It's a really good matchup for him tonight. So yeah, I don't really have a ton to add. They just have their usual guys back after they rested. I think it was the second game of back-to-back last game.
Yeah, it feels like they could just go 9 here and eliminate Conchar, right? Because obviously David Wright's been playing really well. Kennard's been lights the frick out. Yep. They got Santi Aldama as well. So I feel like they could, get away from adding. That's more minutes for those guys too. So that'd be kind of nice. And what could be an important game for them.
Mm-hmm. All right, the real most important game on the slate tonight: Lakers and Wolves. Lakers questionable tag for LeBron James tonight. Probable tag for Anthony Davis. It's sort of a return to normalcy with the Lakers injury report, because all season long we saw these questionable tags for LeBron, though he was actually hurt and now recovering from it. And so now you're like, is it a real questionable tag? Is it the old Lakers questionable tag? I think we've started to get hints at the Lakers questionable tags here. But Justin, what are your thoughts on LeBron James questionable tonight?
I mean, he's playing. I don't think there's any legitimacy to this Q tag. I think it feels like earlier days were just precautionary stuff and we're just going through the motions. So every day we have the auto tweet scheduled tweets ready to go. LeBron James questionable, Anthony Davis probable. I think that's going to be the case the rest of the way. LeBron, we saw last game on Wednesday, played 31 minutes, no reported issues. He's going to kind of continue to ramp up. 30, 31, whereas I think his first 2 games, and you're probably in like the 33, 34 range potentially today. So no reason I think he's not playing. I think he's good to go.
Yep. # biggest game of the season for sure. Major playing implications in this game. So I would expect him to play pretty full minutes. Interesting game from a matchup perspective. Some pretty good options here. LeBron getting McDaniels, Vanderbilt getting Cat. Everyone except Anthony Edwards is kind of in a bad spot. AD getting Gobert as well, who protects paint pretty well there. So very defensive minded matchup here, but excited for what Ant can do. We'll talk about the Wolves right now, I guess.
2 evenly matched teams in the standings, 2 evenly matched teams in their use of questionable tags. The Minnesota Timberwolves questionable tags today: Jalen Noel, Taurean Prince, Austin Rivers, Matt Ryan. There's a lot of illness tags here. I will note this. Taurean Prince questionable illness, Austin Rivers illness, Matt Ryan illness, Kyle Anderson and Anthony Edwards are probable with an illness tag. So something clearly going around on Minnesota. Justin, any concerns about availability for any of the rotation player questionable tags, which really comes down to Taurean Prince?
Basically we have just a lot of these. We have these MTQ tags for guys who are on the fringe rotation, like Matt Ryan, Austin Rivers. It's like, okay, cool. Like, Jalen Noel even, they have Jordan McLaughlin. Jalen Noel was we talked about this on the show, how he's been in danger of being out of the rotation anyway. So their main guys look good to go. Cat, Anthony Edwards, Kyle Anderson, and Taurean Prince is obviously the only one that really matters here. Naz Reid, I think, is obviously the biggest one here out of the reserves. He broke his wrist. It sounds like I saw Jeff Stotts tweet this out. Like the average time missed was like 9 weeks or something, like wild with that fracture. So looks like he's just done, which is really unfortunate because he's been awesome for them. I think he's a free agent this summer, so I hope he still gets paid as he should. But yeah, I mean, that's a pretty decent loss for this team.
Yeah, a couple things. We saw lastly, it was Prince, then Ant got added, then Austin Rivers got added, all with this illness thing. Obviously, Austin Rivers isn't a big deal, but so let's talk then. And I should mention too, post game, Mike Conley also sick, not listed, but keep an eye out for a possible Mike Conley addition here.
Yep.
Man, the Nas thing sucks. And so there's a whole lot going on here. You talked about Noel. Noel's kind of live here because they've moved Slow-Mo's minutes to the backcourt for how he's being subbed in. So now you're going to be moving him back into the front court now. So it's weird, but Naz Reid going away helps the guards because Kyle Anderson's rotation is going to be shifted to filling in the non-Gobert, non-Cat minutes that Naz is essentially filling. So I think those guys are a little bit more live. I'm curious to see if the books are sharp enough to pick that up.
I would add also that one of the beat writers speculated that Josh Minot might get an rotation tonight. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, that'd be wild, man. I think against the Lakers with their size, I guess that's not crazy.
Yeah.
I think that would just be if McDaniel. I mean, they probably want to play McDaniels a ton of minutes today, though. I think in a perfect world they can match him with LeBron. But I think this really helps Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He's kind of been the next man in, so I think he would get some pretty decent minutes. Again, # biggest game of the year, so they might just run those 8 guys. Maybe Jalen Noel doesn't get minutes. I think he would be kind of next in if things are kind of going well. We saw Ant play a ton of minutes here, 40 with the gimpy ankle as well and an illness. So really big spot for him as well. And I mentioned Cat. Having a Vanderbilt matchup is probably what top 5 toughest matchup for him with the way Vanderbilt can guard some big force with his athleticism and ability to rebound.
Alex Berg in chat, always bringing the Minnesota notes, says Kyle Anderson wouldn't have played last game, but his 92-year-old grandma flew into Phoenix for the game. The # grandma narratives are strong for Kyle Anderson. All right, let's move to Sacramento in Portland. A game of an NBA team against a G League team. Let's start with the G League team. Portland.
There's nothing to talk about with Portland. They're healthy. It's fine. Let's move on.
Yeah, exactly. Doubtful tags for Ryan Arcidiacono, Cam Reddish. Questionable tag for Trendon Watford. Out tags for Jeremy Grant, Keon Johnson, Damian Lillard, Yusuf Nurkic, Anthony Simons, and, of course, Justice Winslow. They went 7-man rotation last game. They couldn't score. I mean, they scored 80 points in an NBA game, which is really, really something. Nas Little played 40. Shaedon Sharpe played 45. Kevin Knox, 39. They had Arcidiacono available and just were like, we've seen enough. We'd rather play 7 guys than play Ryan Arcidiacono any longer. So they had 2 10-day additions in Skylar Mays and
Shaq Harrison.
Yeah. Shaq Harrison always pops up this time.
Oh, yeah.
Love to see it.
Love Shaq Harrison.
I'll also say that Shaq Harrison, Arcidiacono back again.
It's just so good. It's so good. And the best thing about this is if you are struggling to score in the NBA, you bring in Shaq Harrison because he is known for on-ball defense and not really offense at all. So we'll see if Portland can get anywhere close to their team total tonight, which is at 108 points again, because Vegas is just like, we don't know what to do with our models with these guys playing out here. So with the additions of those 10-day contracts, do we see these guys get into the rotation tonight? Do we see a little bit more spread out minutes than the 7-man rotation? Justin, what are your thoughts?
I would think so. They'll have 9 to 10 available depending on Trendon Watford. And Trendon Watford, he's cute. I just don't see a reason why you play Trendon Watford in this spot if you're clearly in the tank. And I will say that if they do end up upgrading either Cam Reddish or Arcidiacono to available, I will not be falling for that trap again. I will not be projecting those guys for minutes. Fool me once, et cetera, et cetera. But so I'm counting, I'll probably have 9, right? And those 9 would be those same starters from last game. And then Jabari Walker, John Butler, Skylar Mays, and Shaq Harrison off the bench. Skylar Mays, the signing was made official yesterday, so he's definitely on the team. And then Shaq Harrison, the report from Sean Highkin was that he's expected to be available tonight. I don't think you ideally want to be playing guys like 40, 45 minutes, So if you have those guys on the bench, I don't see why you wouldn't at least use them a little bit. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't have much faith in this team scoring a lot of points. I mean, we're chopping off big slices of the pie for some of these guys when they're playing 40, 45 minutes, but that pie is 80 points as we saw on Wednesday. Yeah. So Shaedon Sharpe season, I mean, we talked about it last week when, we are in peak Shaedon Sharpe season. So that's about it. That's all I have confidence in at this point.
Yeah, a few things. One, Dink, you call them a G League team, you don't go to me first. Come on, man. Secondly, Shaedon Sharpe's going to play a ton. They said they're going to play him until he fouls out. We saw like a 1.5 minute rest period, and he played like the whole second half again. He does play garbage time. He is going to continue to play garbage time. We were debating and putting him at 39 minutes, which could be very soft. So he's going to handle the ball. We saw the touch time come up. They're asking him to run offense. Whether they don't care about winning, they're going to just do all they can out of Shaedon Sharpe. I wouldn't. So these should mention Shaq and Skylar Mays got signed on the hardship exception. Mm-hmm. I'm not 100% sure that they play because they're going to play Sharpe a lot. They want to play Kevin Knox a lot. Billups said they want to play him a ton of minutes right now. They want to play Jabari a bunch of minutes. I think Matisse Thybulle's minutes would be in jeopardy. I think if anybody gets affected the most by this, it's Matisse Thybulle because Shaq's an on-ball defense guy, as we kind of mentioned. So I'm very nervous on Thybulle's minutes. I'm not nervous on Sharpe's minutes. I'm not nervous on the zero minutes if Watford's out. Not nervous on Knox's minutes. A little bit nervous about Eubanks as they got Butler and Jabari. But I think those guys, regardless of Skylar Mays and Shaq, those youngish guys, especially Shaedon, could be playing a ton. And one more thing, man. If you need to know how Vegas is going to be lining the Kings for the playoff odds, like that is disrespectful to have a 108 was 112 last game for this team. That's. I mean, I would be. Yeah. I mean, if I'm Mike Brown, I'm like, hey, look what they're putting. Look what people think of your defense, man. They think people think we score 112 on you.
I think this team can score 110 points.
Yeah. So Mike, when you say you're not concerned about the minutes for these guys, do you mean like approaching 40 or do you mean like just like 30 plus? They're good for those. Because if you add in, if they do run a 9-man rotation, just like minutes wise, I mean, we saw Nasir Little go from, I think it was like 34, 20, 40 the last 3 games. So like trying to project these guys from a minutes perspective, there's been a really wide range. Now that 20 was the second night of back-to-back, like there's a lot of things kind of going into that. But are you, when you're saying you're not concerned about these guys' minutes and Knox, Little, Sharpe, are you thinking upper 30s for these guys?
For Sharpe, yes. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of Shaq or Skylar Mays. They're very different as far as role, right? And I think that the Shaq, like I said with Matisse, that the role is very similar. So I have major concerns about his minute ceiling, especially now that they can actually sit him now that they have more than 7 healthy players. But So, but I think like we have him at 30. I think we ticked down to 38.5 just because we never projected someone that much in the regular season. But and I joked he could play 48. And it's pretty freaking close.
But Little and Knox, what are your?
If you tell me no Watford, I think we'll be projecting them for a ton.
Okay. All right, let's move.
And actually, I should mention too, there's a chance that they play Watford just as the backup center. I think that's unlikely. But if they wanted to kind of keep his minutes down or something like that, just so they could play Nas and those dudes more. But I do think that Watford starts it, and he was getting a little bit closer from what I was seeing with warm-ups and stuff. But
but for what it's worth, like Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons could probably play tonight if they wanted to. Like,
All right, Sacramento side of this is really clean. Dellavedova's out, Keon Ellis out. Otherwise, they're fine. The biggest risk there is just the game environment and minutes being limited for Sacramento. Let's move to San Antonio.
The biggest risk is just pull up this box score, and this can happen again.
It's a disaster. The good news is, I mean, the team grabbed like 60 rebounds. So the good news is you could get some value on the rebounds props, but good Lord. I mean, you see Sabonis only 27 minutes, Fox only 27 minutes. These guys routinely in games that are out of hand during the regular season have still been 32, 35. And it was only 27 was all that was needed in this one. So that could be the case again. Let's move to another game that has similar vibes, Golden State and San Antonio. And this game is in Golden State, so we do have a professional Golden State team as opposed to the G League team that plays on the road this season. For Golden State, Andrew Wiggins still listed out, Andre Iguodala out, so nothing injury-wise to really note there. For San Antonio, Romeo Langford questionable, Devin Vassell questionable, Jeremy Sohan out, not listed on the injury report. Keldon Johnson, Zach Collins is also listed out. So we'll probably get back into Sandro Mamukelashvili stock, which is always fun. Devin Vassell questionable here. Keldon Johnson and Trey Jones, the two guys not listed on the injury report. Justin, you can talk about this game just generally, but start with the Spurs side of things. What are your expectations here? As we know with the Spurs, the injury reporting can be challenging, to say the least.
Yeah, not a back-to-back for them, but doesn't really matter because they've been holding guys out for injury management or non-back-to-back, so we're not surprised at all. Vassell's out, Langford's out, and if that's the case, we see Trey Jones, Malachi Branham, Keldon Johnson, KBD, and Mamu start. We'll also note that we saw Doug McDermott. But he got a DNP-CD on Wednesday. I think he's like a shutdown candidate where he maybe doesn't play the rest of the way, and they just give his minutes to Julian Champagnie, who got the surprise start last game and may have just taken his rotation spot as like a 3-4. But yeah, I don't really have a ton. We've seen a lot of these variations of the Spurs, when they're shorthanded, where they had guys up in and out with injury management. Just another day ending in Y for them in March.
Yeah, not much to add, except it feels like one of Romeo or Vassell are going to sit. And then, as you mentioned, Doug McDermott was not listed in the last game with this elbow thing. Now he gets listed with a probable tag. So a little bit of a signal there. But everything else you pretty much covered.
Yeah, my favorite with the Spurs, Doug McDermott not listed on the injury report, doesn't play. Romeo Langford pop calls out, he plays. None of it matters. It just doesn't matter. Let's move to the last game of the night, Denver and Phoenix, a game that I think we were all excited about coming into this week, and now maybe a little bit less excited. Denver on the second night of back-to-back here. Justin, you and the Underdog crew had a lot of notes about the Denver likelihood and availability situation tonight. They have not filed on the injury report, so nothing officially filed. Fill in the people on the notes you guys have gathered.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk last night that they'll be down like 2 to 3 starters today, and obviously those starters would be Jokic, Jamal Murray, and KCP. Malone, we got that quote from Malone pre-game yesterday that we put out on the Underdog account about Jokic. If there's any doubt, we'll err on the side of caution with 7 games left. This could be continuing that on the second leg of back-to-back, continuing to err on the side of caution by holding him out. I will not be surprised if he doesn't play. And then Mike Malone said that Jamal is unlikely to play after playing 36 minutes on Friday with back-to-back. That's not surprising either. And then he also said that KCP, at one point, they weren't expecting him to even play on Thursday because of illness. And he clearly saw that with the shooting. That he was under the weather. So I think out of these guys, obviously Jamal is doubtful. I think KCP, I would say, is 40% to play. I don't feel good about his chances given these comments, second leg of back-to-back. Jokic probably 50-50. So could see a starting lineup tonight of Bruce Brown, Christian Brown, MPJ, Aaron Gordon, and Thomas Bryant. We'll note that if you take out Jokic and KCP, they still have 12 available players. They have Ish Smith, Peyton Watson, Chanchar, Jeff Green, Zeke Naji, who would be the 5 off the bench if Jokic and KCP sit. And they also have Reggie Jackson and everybody's best friend DeAndre Jordan deep in the reserves as well. So I guess my question, I don't know if this is a big thing, but I'm just curious your guys' thoughts. So if Jamal, Jokic, and KCP all don't play today, do you think Reggie Jackson gets rotation minutes?
Yeah. I think so. I mean, you need some offense there if you're taking out especially for those non Bruce Brown minutes, right?
I think still behind Ish Smith, in the rotation.
I don't know. I think they would want to play him.
He was for garbage time, but I don't know if they do that for a normal rotation spot. My guess is that he would play. I also think if they're gonna sit Jokic and KCP and Murray, why not sit Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon at this point? I mean, Aaron Gordon was nursing something enough that they said it was too long on the bench for him to be warmed up to come back into the game against Philadelphia. So I think there's a lot of guys vulnerable here, and as you allude to, they have a ton of depth still with them. And shout out to Denver taking it as easy as possible on Jokic down the stretch here, so we can keep this award heading towards Joel Embiid. Because the one thing that was, separating these guys was the games played, and Denver's front office is like, you know what? Let's even that up as well. Let's just even that up, and then we can move on from this toxic MVP conversation for years to come, hopefully. Gallagher is frozen again, so we'll add a second Gallagher into the mix here. You've got the multi-Gallagher view. We'll take frozen Gallagher away. Let's move to the Phoenix side of things. They don't have anybody listed on the injury report, so I don't think there's much to talk about here other than Justin Gallagher and I speculate on Wednesday of a quick Kevin Durant ramp up, just given the nature of the injury and ankle sprain, the nature of time remaining left in the season, and then having a back-to-back on one of their final sets of these games. And my thought process was just like, hey, you've only got 5 or 6 games to get him up to speed and get continuity going here. The back-to-back is next week, Thursday and Friday. So we saw in the first game, I think it was upper 20s minutes for Kevin Durant. When did he end up getting to? 29. A little bit of rust there, 5 for 18 from the field. What are your minutes expectations?
Yeah, I mean, 31, 32. We kind of saw this the first time he came back, right? He played 27, then played 31 in the second game. So I feel good about him getting somewhere in the low 30s today. And yeah, we'll note that first game, we talked about this on the show too, where Kevin Durant said he was expecting to play low 20s, and they were up like 15 with 2 minutes left or something. And Monty put him back in for no reason, right? So we've seen just Monty, his approach in general with KD's minutes, not being very conservative, being a little bit more aggressive. Like you said, they don't have that much time left to develop continuity and to ramp him up for the playoffs. So 32, I think, makes sense for me tonight, somewhere around there.
I would say 33. Shout out to us for nailing 29 minutes, by the way. Just ankle injuries, right? Much quicker ramp up. The knee injury was way more severe. It took 3 games to get to full. So I think getting closer to full today makes sense. I think he's got like 35 upside. I think the downside's like 31, 32. So I think 33 is a pretty good projection. It's Jaden McDaniels. Shut him down, man. I mean, why would you want to go out there and play hard when you got Jaden McDaniels draped all over you? So and he had to guard Cat as well. So pretty daunting task there. But their defense, I thought his defense was really impactful. Like Cat scored a lot, but I thought Durant made it tougher on him. So really nice to see the Suns play some pretty good defense. Should also mention too that Josh Okogie's minutes are up, and that's been a pretty consistent thing, except when he missed everything in Dallas. He's had some pretty strong minutes. We saw him pick up the Anthony Edwards matchup. It's kind of weird. Like if you take Jamal Murray out, it's a meeting with the Bobs. What would you do here? They just don't need the on-ball defense. So he's like low-key affected if Murray and Jokic and those guys aren't playing.
Yeah, and also some just other back-end notes. Landry Shamet not in the rotation last game for Terrence Ross, a little bit of a surprise based on the way they had been playing those guys before. I do think you're going to see just some funky stuff at the back end of the Phoenix rotation during the rest of the stretch here, as I'm guessing that it's a big experimentation phase for Monty, just given that he hasn't had the main guys there for like, these are our main roles. Let's now figure out the bench role. And so I think you might see some fluidity in terms of the very back end of that rotation, who's in and out on a game-by-game basis.
Yeah, if I could add a few things really quick. Bismack Biyombo, I think, was more matchup-based because there was commentary before Durant got hurt that he liked Jock Landale and KD together as a 4-5 combo. We saw a little bit of KD's small ball in that Dallas game on Sunday as well, that before he got hurt. And then, I honestly think that Shamet may have got squeezed because the Wolves are playing so big. So I wouldn't be surprised if Shamet kind of comes back from the dead here, because there was also a comment from Monty Williams saying that they're going to cut Terrence Ross's minutes out and TJ Warren's minutes out. So, yeah, I feel very nervous about Terrence Ross and TJ Warren today.
Yeah. All right, we have done it. We got through the 13-game slates. We have another one ahead on Sunday and then on Tuesday of next week. Just a reminder for programming note coverage, you will not see us on Monday. There are no games on Monday because the basketball public relations team has decided to cede way to the national championship and have no NBA games on Monday. So we will be back on Tuesday with another edition of Savage Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis show. In the meantime, make sure to support the people who are supporting us. This show is brought to you by our good friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have plenty of NBA drafts in the lobby for you to peruse and play for real cold, hard cash. So make sure to get in there. They've got preseason, not preseason MLB because MLB started yesterday, but MLB daily NBA snake drafts are daily MLB snake drafts. I'm dying here towards the end, going, as well as playoff best ball for NBA, which we'll be talking about next week. Claff, sick as a dog, has been working on our projections there. So we have those ready to go as well. If you're a subscriber at ETR, you can play their NBA Pick'em games and use our ETR projections and tools to compare ETR projections to their fantasy Pick'em games. And of course, if you have not signed up for Underdog yet, use promo code ETR for a matching deposit bonus up to $100. That's promo code ETR at underdogfantasy.com. Thank you to Justin Fan for joining us this Friday. We have one more Friday, regular season Friday left in the mix that we'll see Justin for next week. In the meantime, if you'd like to follow more of our content behind our paywall, myself and Gary Hartman will be behind the paywall breaking this 13-game slate down tonight at 5 o'clock Eastern time. The good chalk, the bad chalk, the contrarian pivots, the whining about a 13-game slate in late March, and the flag plants will all be there at 5 o'clock Eastern. Join us behind the paywall.
Shout out to me, but Brandon Ingram whisperer over here. Flag planted both of his triple doubles in his career.
There he has it. He will be in chat, hanging out alongside us as well. As always, if you're uninterested in giving us your hard-earned dollars, we ask for your hard-earned clicks. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, get notifications whenever we go live. And of course, smash that like button and feed that algorithm. Help us feed our families. We'll keep feeding you the NBA injury information and analysis that you need to make your DFS lineups, your prop bets, your spread bets. Nom, 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 nom. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Tuesday.